The housing market remains extremely unaffordable. How much house could you afford if you make 60 grand a year? I've got that math and analysis, that and more coming up. My name's Mike Bernardo, the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. It's just unbelievable what's going on in the housing market, and you would expect that inflation pushed prices really high, and then as interest rates have come up, that should bring prices down. Well, what it's meant, talked about this before it happened, and as interest rates went up, fewer people were willing to list their house and move and trade their 3% mortgage in for a 6 or 7% mortgage, and therefore the amount of supply has been so low, it's just been enough to equal the amount of demand, and laws of economics, prices have not come down. We will see if we do enter into a recession, if the consumer can stay resilient, and if ultimately prices do come down. But right now, high prices and high interest rates means housing is extremely unaffordable. I've done a few videos on this about how people have felt trapped in their home, and I guess that starter home wasn't a starter home after all, right? And so we're all sort of navigating this tricky and challenging housing market. But saw this article recently with some helpful math that I thought we should go through, because more importantly, not only is the analysis helpful, it's missing a few really critical components. I want to point those out as well and then give you the updated math. So take a look at this article. It was published a few weeks ago about how much house could you afford. What's the math? If you were making 60 grand a year, how much house could you afford? And they point to a very helpful rule of thumb, and you can't run your life and govern your life on rules of thumb because everyone's financial situation is different. But they introduce a ratio or a rule of thumb that says your housing payment shouldn't be more than 28% of your income, your monthly income, and your housing payment and all of your other debt shouldn't be more than 36% of your monthly income. I think that's a good place to start. And of course, if you've got a lot of debt, or if you live in an area where there's a high cost of living, you've got to factor that in too. You've got to look at your savings goals and the rest of your financial life. But I think before getting to all of that analysis, this rule of thumb is a good place to start. So here's where the author then went and applied the math. All right, so if you're making 60 grand a year, that's 5 grand a month. 28% of that 5 grand is $1,400 a month. So they said that should be your maximum amount for your mortgage. And if you've got other debt, 36% of that 5 grand is $1,800 a month. So your mortgage could be $1,400, and any other debt you have, as long as it's $400 or less, then you should be in good shape. So here's what that led to. If you're able to come up with a down payment on a $200,000 house, a down payment 20%, that would be about 40 grand, a $160,000 mortgage at 7.5% interest rate would be less than that $1,400 a month. They're saying that mortgage would be just around $1,100, and then when you add in escrow, that should keep you below that $1,400 limit. So math works, right? I think that is the start of a helpful measure. But here's the thing. I think there were a few items that you need to consider that were overlooked, okay, And the first one is income taxes. The first one's income taxes. Now, most people don't budget based off of their gross amount of income, and then they sort of plan on, well, I'll budget X percentage for taxes, and I'll budget X percentage for my mortgage, and X percentage for groceries. No. We budget off of our take home. And therefore, I wouldn't apply this 28% and 36% rule to your gross income. I'd apply it to your take-home income. And so that would be, you've got to, consider what are your taxes. So if I were to update that math, and yes, at 60 grand, you might not have a lot of income taxes, but you're definitely going to pay FICA. So that's 7.65%. At least in our state, not sure about your state, but your state probably has some taxes. There aren't a lot of deductions for state, so add 5% there. and then an effective federal tax rate. You're into the 12% tax bracket at that point, but after deductions and your effective overall rate should be less than 10%. So this is just easy math, okay, rounding. What if overall the amount that goes towards taxes is about 20%, is about 20%? Could be high there, but that then takes your $5,000 number that you started with, and 80% of $5,000 is $4,000. That then is what I would suggest, and I know that's going to make the numbers tighter, but I think it's more realistic. That's what I would then assess that 28% and then 36% towards, is that take-home number, not your gross number. The second thing that's not considered, and I think it could be indirectly considered in those percentages, but guys, it varies significantly, is the other costs of home ownership. When you are renting, or if you are living at home, you're likely not also factoring in or needing to cover some of the utilities. For a lot of rents, they'll throw some of the utilities in. Well, internet's included, or that includes gas, or that includes electric, or whatever. And even if you have to pay for those things separate, it's different paying for those utilities for an apartment versus for an entire house. And therefore, I would want you to spell out in a budget, all right, here's how much I would expect to go towards utilities and the other costs of homeownership. So electric, gas, water, and then internet or some other expenses and maintenance expenses as well. There's more to homeownership than just your monthly mortgage payment. And so I would want to build that in as well, and that might influence, well, how much you can afford. And then the final piece that's sort of overlooked here is other goals, and going back to your take home, okay? So if you're using this 28% and 36% as a good kind of benchmark, as a good rule of thumb, I would have that be applied to take home. And in the first kind of point that I made, we're overlooking taxes that are income taxes that obviously are going to be due. But what about other things that come out of your paycheck, like funding other goals like retirement, okay? And most people want to at least save enough so that they're getting the full company match. But if this is your house and these expenses are semi or mostly permanent, then I would want you to factor in how much house can you afford based on what you're expecting to be saving up for those long-term goals on an ongoing basis. And I would suggest, gosh, 15% if you possibly can. Wouldn't want you to get yourself into a house and, okay, I've got that figured out. Now, how in the world am I going to be able to save up for retirement? And I know most of us just don't think that linearly, but yeah, that's what you've got to consider. That one of the biggest expenses that we all manage is our living expenses. And for many people, that can crowd out the ability to save up for other goals of your financial future. So you've got to figure that in as well. So to me, if I were to update these numbers, I would start with probably that $4,000 take-home number, and you've got to figure out, does that give you enough room for your retirement savings and so on? 28% of that $4,000 number is a total payment of around $1,100. And then to make room for your escrow and for other expenses in your, the cost of homeownership, I would look at around $150,000 home. Paying 20% down, so $30,000 down, leaves you with a $120,000 mortgage at 7.5%, is around $850 a month. Plus escrow, and on a smaller home or less expensive home, your escrow would be lower as well. So plus escrow should give you, keep you below that $1,100 a month limit, and even give you a little excess resources to be able to cover those the other costs of home ownership. So that's the math. I hope it helps, but I'd work with your certified financial planner, because even these rules of thumb and just that analysis, it's not enough where I would suggest that you would apply actual financial decisions to that. You've got to look at your entire financial situation, all 6 areas of your financial life, and weigh the goal and objective of home ownership with the other financial goals that you have. You'll be able to figure out a solution working with your CFP. So if you don't have a CFP on your team, contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or send us an email, info@Korhorn.com. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.